Player development concerns. This is a great one that we've got from one of our parents who are on our program. I'm not going to name names with this one or name clubs, but we will start it off with this player development concerns. And we'll say that the player is playing in Australia and this particular player is playing under 18s. Some of the concerns that are raised in this topic are really, really important that they get attacked, but not only get attacked in the right manner, but get answered by someone who's qualified to do so. And I believe I am probably one of not only the most qualified coaches and player agents in Australia, but also further afield around the world as we work in places like the USA, the UK, and into Europe. So, first thing that we're going to have a little look at on here is this particular player has been promised a couple of times over the past couple of seasons to be given an opportunity to prove himself to play up an age group or two. But every year it's been promised, it's never ever been delivered. This is a big red flag for me, especially if the club are not providing any sort of backup, objective data, or player comparisons to compare one player with another player as to reasons why there's no opportunities to play up. The problem that this family have got now is that their son is working with me. So, as most of you know, my name's Raymond Wood. I'm one of the most highly qualified football coaches on the planet under UEFA, and I'm also a UEFA player agent. I've worked on the Premier League's biggest project to date called the EPPP, where we've produced players like Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, Trent Alexander-Arnold, many, many more players to name. So my area of expertise is youth phase football, which is under 12s all the way through to under 23s and turning them from girls and boys into men and women. Now, one of the big things that I speak to players about is this next point is if you've got a son or daughter or you're a player and let's say there's a squad of 18 players, if you know subjectively, and most players know where they sit in the game of football, if you know you're in the top three players physically, technically, tactically, that is the biggest red flag on the planet. Quite simply because within that training environment, you are becoming the teacher and you're becoming the coach. And what I mean by that is everyone from position 4 all the way to 18, excluding the goalkeepers, are getting a challenge from you, which means you're developing them. The only players who you can develop off within that environment is players of a similar level or who are stronger than you. So if you know subjectively you're in that top three, and most players know where they sit in the group, they know when it gets into 1v1s, 2v2s, they know how strong they are and where they sit. If you're in the top three, that is a major, major concern. Now, let me build you a scenario like this player, for example. If you're an under 18s player and you know you're in the top three, it's a major, major development concern. However, you can attack it by, as an example, if you're training one night a week with your age group, you're playing your game of a weekend with your age group, but then those 2 or 3 other nights where training's going on, you're able to train up with the 23s, the senior men's, the senior women's, whoever it is you're with, you're in that environment where 50% or more of your training week, you can be challenged being around physically stronger and technically better players. However, in this particular player who's on our program, there is no opportunity or promise to train up or play up. This is a major, major red flag. And anyone who's watching this, if this is the same situation for you, you need to change it. Now, the technical director at this club referenced the decision saying that it's all around a club point system that prioritizes having a strong under 18 side. I'm going to call that for what it is. This is utter nonsense and utter BS, and I will call it for what it is. Any technical director, whether you're in Australia, the UK, Europe, or the USA, under 18s, the number one focus should be what? Come on, tell me what it should be. You all know what it should be, and it begins with D and ends with the letter T. It should be all about development. It should not be about winning points for your club or trying to win the league with your team. Under 18s is about getting players from that youth football setup into the senior men's or women's as quick as they can. And the only way you're going to do that is by pushing your stronger players up into the under 23s or into your men's or women's squads to enable them to go and develop. So this is utter BS. This is rubbish. This is poor. And this is just nothing no different than uneducated technical directors who don't know what they're doing. These technical directors should be held accountable no matter where they are in the world, because as a TD, your priority is development, especially when you're working in the youth phase, under 12s to under 20s. Your focus and priority is to identify your strongest players, get them up into stronger age groups, at least for training, and get them to be in that first team and be a success story. And fingers crossed for clubs, as an example, let's say in Australia you play in the NPL, or in America it might be the MLS Next League. Those clubs want to make money by selling these players to the pro clubs, and that's what it should be all about. You've got to recognise where you are in the system. Also, they've had a brilliant little bit of feedback from an ex-pro who's the school coach, who believes that the player is more than capable to play under 23s or above. Now, the club coach might go, yeah, but you're not the coach of this team. You're just the school coach. But if the technical director has got any nous or knowledge about them, they would be having a chat with the school coach, taking on board this coach's area of expertise and asking the question, do you think physically and technically that this player could cope with under 23s or senior men's training and being in that stronger group? But again, I know, especially in places like Australia, clubs don't talk, schools don't talk. And for me, it's just disgusting, because it's all about the egos, it's about them, it's about the clubs, it's not about the players. Seriously, Australia and the USA, you've got to book your ideas up, because at the moment you are not producing anyone. And it's because of behaviour like this and what's going on for this player and this family. Also, this is another one that's so controversial, but player evaluation. So it's all about paying a deposit and you get in the under 18s. It's not about who's the best fit for the 18s, who's good enough to be in the 18s, and who's going to be one of the weaker players who will benefit from being in there to develop. But also, what about your two or three strongest players? To keep them happy and to prove for their development, why wouldn't you say, look, we need you in the 18s for X, Y, or Z reasons, but 60% of your training week, we're going to allow you to train with the men's or the women's team. Now, that's not only a compromise to the player and the club, but it actually in turn will develop the player better. And who's going to benefit from that? The club. Now, this is also a really hot topic because, as you'll see in this point that I've presented here, the 23s and the senior squads are already closed out. So this is a big, big problem. Why would this player and why would this family want to stay at this club? Also, the big one, and this is just laughable, there's no objective testing. And what do I mean by objective testing? So it is the most subjective, opinionated exercise on the planet. I've seen it in Australia and the USA for the last 20 years. Teams and clubs rock up for trials, put players into games, and just let them play in a 7v7 or an 8v8. And that's it. And then they make subjective opinions based on nothing else. Where my background, coming from clubs like in the Premier League or working in League One with PSG, we had something called objective testing, where we're testing players using GPS tracking software, amounts of sprints, decelerations, speed over 5 meters, speed over 10 meters, speed over 20 meters, pass completion, success rate, world-class passing, long distance passing, receiving the ball, securing the ball. So then when a player and a family comes to us and we go, unfortunately, your son and daughter's not selected because of all this data, there's no arguments. But clubs in Australia, for me, are just laughable because it's utter laziness. Because they will take two, three, $4,000 in NPL fees off 200 to 300 players in most clubs and raking in revenue of $1 to $1.5 million a year, but they will not put any time or effort in to protect themselves in the first instance by having something in place like objective testing. Now, this is something that we offer through our program, completely free of charge for clubs who want it. And whenever we reach out to the clubs, what do we get from them? We get the hands, we get the no, we're okay. Do you know what? You're not okay because you're not producing players. You're not developing players, so you're not okay. You need help and you need support. Also, this is the best bit. The families now are being pressured into paying $1,000 deposit by this Sunday to accept the offer. And if they don't pay the money and don't accept the offer, then basically it's adios. We'll bring in the next sucker who's going to pay the $1,000. Why should an under 18 player who's probably been in the system and more than likely been at this club for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, paying two, three, $4,000 a year in fees, when you get to under 18s, why should you be paying a fee? It should be completely free of charge because you're representing that club at senior level. That's the first gripe. The second gripe is clubs are doing this all the way through Australia and including in the USA. They're forcing players and families to pay money and stopping them to have an opportunity to go and look elsewhere to see maybe is there something better. Now, I just don't get why, again, this is fair and why the FFA in Australia and the federations are allowing this to happen. Because what's happening is, as you'll see in the next point, other clubs' trials don't start until late October, meaning paying a deposit locks them out of exploring better options. Now, why should that player or family want to look for better options? Well, why wouldn't you want to look for better options? Because you'd want to see, is the clubs that are doing things like objective testing, is the clubs that are using GPS trackers, is the clubs that are doing anything more futuristic than what other clubs are doing, which in turn is going to benefit and develop that player a whole lot better. But again, clubs are backing players and families into corners and saying, basically, we haven't got any opportunity for you to play up age groups. We haven't got anything to test you objectively to give you any sort of feedback to show you how good or how bad you are as a player. And unless you cough up your $1,000 deposit, we're not interested and we'll see you later, regardless of how many years you've already been at the club. This is the problem with football in Australia. It is rotten to the core. And this is why Australia will never do nothing in the men's game of football over the next 20 years, period. The family are now unsure whether it's worth committing financially before assessing if the environment supports development. For me, first thing I would be doing, I would be coming out of the NPL system. I would be looking to invest your $3,000 to $4,000 into a private academy. There is hundreds of private academies throughout Australia doing amazing work. As an example, we've got one or two up in Brisbane. I'm aware of 4 or 5 really solid ones in Sydney, 4 or 5 solid ones in Melbourne. My advice would be this: put your money into private academies, go and do 2, 3 nights a week with the professionals. And when I say the professionals, I mean it because, like, as an example, our two private big academies up in Brisbane, it's littered with UEFA A license and B license coaches, quality coaching, and not what you always get as a true reflection in clubland. Not always the case, but private academies for me have better coaches. I would look to sign up to something called futsal, and I would look to do men's futsal 2, 3 nights a week to up your hours as well. And also, then finally, what I would do is I would go and join a divisional men's team, go and play men's football every weekend where physically you're getting a challenge. And guess what? You know, when you're physically getting a challenge, players' technical abilities got to get better, because if they don't have a quicker touch, if they don't release the ball earlier, they're going to get the tackle. And it's amazing how players develop when they're in a challenging environment. Do you think that the likes of Wayne Rooney, when he was coming through the system at Everton, and he come on the scene at the age of 15, scoring a winning goal against Arsenal in the Premier League, can you imagine if that club Everton would have said to him when he was 15, no, 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 you got to stay in the under 18s. We need to be competitive for the points system. What a load of utter rubbish and nonsense. Utter nonsense and rubbish. If you're good enough, you should be up in the age groups. You should be playing men's or women's football, getting challenged and getting developed. And that would be my advice. The benefits of playing men's divisional football, the quality, I'll be honest, in general, in club football around places like Australia, it's poor. There's probably one good coach in every club, and 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, the best coach at the club always coaches the men's team or the women's team. It's very rare they'll coach the 18s or the 14s or the 12s. However, in the UK and Europe, it's littered with A license and pro license coaches working with academy teams from 10s all the way through to 18s. The problem that you've got in places like Australia is you've only normally got one very experienced and qualified coach, and unfortunately, they normally take on the top team, whether it be the men's or the women's. So for me, don't let anyone at Clubland in Australia try and kid you into saying, oh, what a joke, going into places like divisional football and playing men's divisional. You're better playing under 18s. Yeah, of course you are. And for a note on this one, I'll give you an example just within Queensland alone. And I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I'll let you search it up. There's only one player in Queensland in the past 20 years who's gone on and played Premier League football, and he didn't come through the NPL system. He come through private coaching, private academy, and church soccer. Have a look up and I'll give you the clue. He used to play for Burnley in the Premier League. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I get very passionate about this, but I've seen this nonsense and this BS for the last 18, 19 years, and I'm getting sick of it. Clubs need to be called out, and the federation needs to be called out. I hope that answers your question. If you got any more questions, guys, please drop it in below.